Dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack and flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yo, what's good, original crew, man? We back, baby. More Mr. Ballen. Another segment of top 3 places you can't go and people who went anyways. This is part 12. Last week we had a good one. You know, some people, you know what I'm saying, try to sway their opinions, you know, or they tried to well, let me backtrack. They ain't swaying their opinions. They tried to criticize other people's opinions. My recommendations and suggestions for anyone who wants to leave a comment, before you debunk somebody else's statements and what they possibly believe, put your feelings in the comments first, and then say whether you or if you are gonna disagree or agree.
Give your reasons why, and
put your opinion. So if I feel like I disagree with your opinion, I can come back to you. You know what I'm saying? I just don't try to tear somebody else down without putting your own opinion out there. You know? Do unto others. Hey, but y'all seem to love these. She really loves these.
I do.
You know what I'm saying?
I do.
I really like the one we did Friday. You know what I'm saying, for Friday. You know what I'm saying? The one. A lot of people still ain't put their opinions of what happened to them on that island. So y'all go back and watch that one as well. But before we get into it, make sure you check out the links in the description box
down below.
You already know where to go, man. You want to go first support, all you have to do is check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video,
knock it over the thumbs up.
Hey, don't forget, man, go over there on that Facebook. Go like our Facebook page. It is in the comment section down below. The link that will get you there directly. Also, if you want further content, not necessarily like this, but other stuff that you might be familiar with what we do. We just don't put it on YouTube. We got a Patreon. Y'all can go show us some love and support if you want that extra content or just want to be an extra support to the channel. Please go check the Patreon out.
Definitely do that.
But let's go. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's check it out. Let's see what this one's about, man.
So fair warning, I've included a video with today's number 2 story, and if you have a fear of deep, dark water or are claustrophobic, you may want to consider skipping it. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right channel because that's all we do, and we upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please tell the like button you're sorry for all the hostility this year and that you want to take them on vacation as a way of making up for it. When they say yes, bring them to Skinwalker Ranch and promptly punt them through the portal. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories. In October of 2007, Helena Carroll and her fiancé, John Cullen, had saved a little bit of money and they were torn on what to do with it. They knew they should put it aside and put it towards a down payment on a new house, but they also really wanted to go on vacation, and lately life had been very stressful for both of them, and so ultimately they decided, let's just blow it all on an amazing vacation. And so later that month, they flew off to Thailand. Over the course of their week, they spent most of their time at their resort, sitting in the pool and eating nice food, and they were having this really nice time. And on their last day, they decided they needed to do something a little bit more adventurous. And so they decided to explore the Nam Talu cave inside of the Khao Sok National Park, which is this 160 million year old rainforest that was not that close to their resort. In fact, it was not really a huge tourist destination because of how cumbersome it was to get there. But from everything they read about this park, and specifically this cave they wanted to go in, it was just this breathtaking experience, and so they were sold. After signing up for a guided tour, they headed down to the pier where they boarded a boat and drove 90 minutes to the entrance of this park. When they got off, they met their 2 guides and then walked down to this entrance area where they connected with the other 5 tourists that were going to be on this tour with them. Those 5 people were 2 Swiss parents and their 2 teenage daughters, along with a 10-year-old German boy who was there on his own. After everyone had said hello and introduced themselves, they began walking through the park towards this cave. The allure of the Nam Talu cave, which is the cave they were going to be going to, was there was a river that ran through it where at times as you walked through this cave, you'd have to hold onto a rope and wade through the water where the water was up to your waist or even up to your neck at times. But it felt safe and controlled, and it was kind of exhilarating for foreign tourists to go through the cave. As they were just about to get to the entrance of the Nam Talu cave, some park rangers happened to walk down the path next to them, and they exchanged some words with the 2 local guides that were leading this tour, and they told them it's a bad idea to go into the Nam Talu cave because this is the monsoon season. No one's supposed to be in there, and if it starts raining while you're inside the cave, you won't hear it, and it will flood the cave, and then you'll be trapped. But despite the warning, the group continued on because it hadn't rained that day and there wasn't any rain in the forecast, and the 2 local guides that were leading this tour were really confident that they were not in danger. They entered the cave a little after 1 p.m. and right away they were walking through little puddles of water that got a little bit deeper, and pretty soon they were holding onto the rope and walking through the deeper sections of the cave. Water's up to their waist, and by all accounts it was very exciting. And the entirety of the tour should only take about an hour, where it's 30 minutes in, you hit the turnaround point and you come back. And they had made it about 20 to 25 minutes in, right before the turnaround point, when Helena and John, who were towards the front of the tour group, heard what sounded like a rushing or roaring sound coming from the entrance of the cave. And they turned around and they saw this wave of water barreling into the cave. And instinctively, John and Helena start climbing up the walls. And luckily, there was a ledge where they were, and they managed to scramble up onto this ledge. And Helena would say, as soon as she got up there, she turned around to look where she had just been standing, right as this surge of water blasted past them, carrying with it the 2 tour guides and the 10-year-old German boy who immediately got swept around the corner down the dark tunnel. And then seconds later, the 2 Swiss parents and their teenage daughters, they got swept away around the corner. The couple was now stranded on this ledge with no time to be upset about what they're witnessing, because the water was not only surging past them, it was rising, and there was limited amount of space before they would just be completely submerged in water. And so they tried their best to climb up this wall to a slightly higher ledge, which was still only a few feet away from these rushing rapids. And so as they're crouched up on this ledge, John eventually says to Helena, we're going to die if we stay here. We're going to drown. And so I need to find a way to maybe get past this initial rush of water, and maybe on the far side of the cave, I can work my way back up to the entrance and hopefully get us some help. And initially Helena said, don't do it, don't leave, we're safe here. But eventually he said to her, I have to go. I love you, I have to go. And she said, okay. And he jumped into the water, and almost immediately he was pulled under and disappeared. For the next 20 hours, Helena had to sit on this ledge in total darkness until the water finally began to subside a little bit and rescuers could come in to get her. What had happened was, after Helena and the rest of the tour group had gone inside of the cave, they made it just far enough in that they were out of earshot of what was happening outside of the cave. Right at that moment, a huge freak storm rolled in. There was this flash flood that was so intense, the lake that was right outside of the entrance to this cave, it rose up and began dumping directly into the cave. It was like a dam basically breaking, and all the water just poured in all at once. When Helena was finally let out of the cave, she didn't know what happened to her fiance or the other tourists that were part of the group. But as soon as she stepped outside, she saw there were 8 coffins that had been lined up right outside, and she found out that she was the sole survivor. Despite this tragedy, people still go into the Nam Talu cave even during monsoon season.
They gave y'all a warning, bro. Like, literally gave y'all a warning. And y'all top 3 places you can't go. People who win anyways. You know what I'm saying?
And they exchanged those words with the tour guides, which, like, I understand, like, a lot of times it may not have been, like, any, like, rain in the forecast, but
yeah,
I guess with that situation, it's kind of like, there's no rain in the forecast. We do this often, so it should be fine. But it just so happened this particular time, right after they warned.
Well, I'll say this. We don't know necessarily if it was any rain in the forecast or not, because it just hasn't been raining lately. So,
well, I'm just going off of, okay. I'm just going off of what was said. But that they felt like they'll be okay because there was no rain in the forecast and it hadn't been raining. So they felt like they was fine. But I'm pretty sure if it showed that rain was in the forecast, they wouldn't have went. Is what I'm trying to say. But
my thing is, we also got to realize these are in other places of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times people going to risk certain things and certain adventures for the want of the money.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like, hey, if we say no, we'll have to get the money back, right?
Yeah.
And this is how we make a living. So due to monsoon season, our income drops.
Yeah,
So they probably looked at it as like, well, it hasn't been raining. Doesn't seem as though it's going to be raining. So we might can go in. It's just an hour. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I thought about that. I was like, they're not trying to miss out
on the money.
Know.
And unfortunately, you put 8 lives at risk.
Yeah.
Which just so happened, well, technically 9. Because you have one person who survived. And I hate John Hill. That's what I like. You were safe. And I understand you wanted to go out to rescue. But also, like, it's better you sit there and wait it out.
And it's the thing, I would have personally, like, I hate that it happened to, you know, the 8 individuals. But if, okay, we seen it. We was able to get to some type of safety. I would have remained there because 2 people already know that we were in here.
Yeah.
And they know that this happened. So I'm pretty sure they would send help.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Or you got to look at it like this. It's something people still do today.
Yeah.
Eventually, once the rain stops and the sinks, somebody's going to come in. So or if we see the water start leveling out, we'll be able to go down and get our own stuff out. Yeah. Because that's the reason why they were able to go in. Is because the water started to level out. Right. So eventually the water would have leveled out. So the best thing in that circumstance is just wait it out.
True. And not just 2 people. Whoever, you got the tour guys, their family, you got the 10-year-old boy. I'm pretty sure his family is going to be like wondering, like,
why by himself though? That right there is just like
again
crazy.
Going back to what you said, it's different places of the world, so they probably like.
I ain't sending my 10-year-old child to go on those fucking hike or visit by them damn self.
Yeah, I understand, but with that being said, they know that he's there, so help was going to come once things subsided and calm down a little bit.
I just hate John.
I know he felt like in his heart, he did what he needed to do or had to do, but unfortunately, it cost him his life.
Yeah.
In 2014, 35-year-old Darren Spivey was a passionate scuba diver, and he wanted to share that passion with his 15-year-old son, Dylan. So on Christmas Eve that year, he gave his son an early gift, scuba tanks. The pair was apparently so excited to use them that they planned on doing an early morning dive the very next day on Christmas. Later, Dylan's grandmother would tell the media that her grandson actually didn't really want to go on this dive trip, but he knew his dad did, and he adored his father and didn't want to let him down, so he decided to go anyways. The following morning, the father and son got up and they made their way to a local dive site, only to discover that the gate to the dive site was locked. The father still really wanted to do this dive, and so he decided he would take them to another dive site in Central Florida, which was inside of a wildlife management area that he knew was open 24/7 to hunters and hikers and divers. So the pair drove over to the entrance of this park, and sure enough, it was open. And so they went through and began driving down these windy back roads until they finally reached this dirt lot that was right next to a pond. They got out of the car, they put on their wetsuits and their scuba gear, and began waddling their way over to this wooden walkway that starts in the parking lot and goes all the way up and out onto the pond like a dock. And as they walked down this wooden walkway, they would have passed a number of signs telling them, do not dive in this pond unless you're an expert diver. Because this is not just some pond. This pond was the entrance to the infamous and deadly Eagle's Nest, which in the cave diving community is known as the Mount Everest of cave diving. At the bottom of this little placid-seeming pond is a narrow hole that is a tunnel that goes straight down, and that is the single way in or out of this massive underwater cave system. Expert divers will swim over to this hole and grab the guideline that goes down into this cave, and they'll follow it and they'll swim straight down until the light above them fades, and all they can see below them is just black nothingness. And once they get through the end of this tunnel, it opens up into this massive chasm that's called the ballroom. And as soon as you get into the ballroom, if you stop and shine your light in any direction, You will not see a wall. No matter how powerful your flashlight is, you can't see a wall. It's so big. Divers that have been down there have said it feels like you're in outer space. This guideline goes straight down to the bottom of the ballroom at about 130 feet, at which point you see a sign that has a Grim Reaper on it that says, "Stop, prevent your own death, do not go any farther. There's nothing in this cave that is worth dying for." Basically,
yo, when you see a sign like that, that's telling in itself. Like, for one, it's already warning signs before we even get to this motherfucker. Then when we get in there, it's like, all right, you an expert diver. Yeah. So you expert enough to, you know what I'm saying, even get in here. Then when you get down there, they're like, hey, I don't give a fuck how expert you are. You ain't that damn good. You know what I'm saying?
And then I'm wondering, like, I'm pretty sure if they have it, like, all along, like, y'all seen it. Because, you know, some people be having tunnel vision, and they just be like, but I'm pretty sure, because you ain't got to do nothing but tell me one time.
Because this story very much so kind of reminds me of the story with the Titanic submersible. Yeah, submersible, whatever it is. But how the son didn't want to go, but all because of the excitement of the day, he just gave in. Hey, when y'all intuition, whether you young, old, or what, male, female, I don't give a fuck what you are. When that intuition tells you, nah, they might not listen to it. Like, you ain't getting them signs for. And 9 times out of 10, the other person getting that sign, but they ain't trying to listen to it. Yeah. You got to be wise for yourself.
Your last chance to turn around and get to the surface relatively easily, because from this sign the cave splits off in 2 different directions, where the tunnel gets narrower and it kind of spiders around, and in certain points it goes all the way down to 300 feet. So beyond this sign, it is extremely dangerous unless you know what you're doing, and even then it's still extremely dangerous. There's also a current that runs through Eagle's Nest, so if you were to lose the guideline, especially in the ballroom, you could be blown away and then have a really hard time finding it again, because it's pitch black down there, and it's like finding a needle in a haystack. And if you're not holding on to the guideline, it's nearly impossible to find the one way out. So you understand how intimidating and dark and dangerous this place is, here's a video of a diver going through that tunnel into the ballroom.
Down there's a warning sign or a stop sign, warning divers that aren't trained for this type of diving, cave trained or trimix trained, to not go any further, to help save lives. A lot of divers have died trying to do these types of dives, and the thing is, at these depths, small mistakes can cost lives. So the sign is there just as a warning to help prevent any future accidents.
But as Darren and Dylan sat at the end of the walkway,
after watching that, bro, like, yeah, I'm glad I'm born on land, bro. Like, the people who do certain things, like, but certain things, like, everything ain't meant for everybody. You know what I'm saying? And just because your family might feel comfortable doing something, it's on you to make the, you know?
Or like, right. And like she said, like, no matter how experienced you are, like, small mistakes or just, you know, mishaps can happen that may cause you your life.
I wouldn't even get in the water from the jump.
Yeah.
Let alone go into that narrow of a hole.
Yeah.
I ain't claustrophobic like that, but shit, that day I will become claustrophobic, and I'll be like, hell no, you gotta
I am to a certain extent, and I do not like water, large bodies of water.
And especially going to a large body of water with a little ass hole,
What you said?
you're going to piss yourself.
to help prevent any future accidents.
But as Darren and Dylan sat at the end of the walkway getting ready to jump into this pond, they were unfazed by the countless warnings, even though neither of them were expert divers. In fact, Dylan wasn't even a certified diver at all. This was one of his first dives. Before the pair jumped into the water, Darren texted his fiancée and said they were at Eagle's Nest and they were about to do this dive and that he would call when they got back to the surface. After that, he put his phone away on the surface and the two of them jumped into the water and started swimming their way over to the entrance to Eagle's Nest. Hours went by and Darren's fiancée did not get a call from Darren. And so by the time the sun was going down, she decided she had to go check on them. So she hopped in the car and she drove to the parking lot at Eagle's Nest and she saw Darren's car and no sign of the boys anywhere. Police were called and very quickly professional divers were brought to Eagle's Nest to go down and see if they were still down there. The divers got in the water, they made their way over to the narrow entrance, they went down the tunnel, they entered into the ballroom, and they stopped, holding onto the guideline. They pulled out their flashlights and began scanning around the ceiling immediately inside of the ballroom, because they had done this before, and it was not uncommon to have fatalities inside of caves be near the entrance. And as they're scanning around, they stop when they see Dylan's lifeless body trapped up against the ceiling about 6 feet away from the entrance. He had inflated his water wings, which are emergency flotation devices. His mouthpiece was out of his mouth, and it would turn out he had no more air left in his tanks. After the divers retrieved Dylan's body, they went back into Eagle's Nest, and they went all the way down following the guideline to the bottom of the ballroom, where they found Darren. He was laying on a little sandy hill, his mouthpiece was out, he also had no air left in his tanks, and he was laying right next to the famous sign that has the Grim Reaper on it that says, "Stop, prevent your own death, don't go any farther." Both Darren and Dylan's gauges showed they had gone down to 230 feet. For reference, between 0 and 130 feet is considered recreational diving. And so in those depths, you can breathe regular air. So the same air you breathe on the surface is the air that goes in your tanks. You don't need really special training. You can kind of do whatever you want in those depths. Below 130 feet, you need to breathe a special gas mix, you need special equipment, and you definitely need specialized training. All three of those things Dylan and Darren did not have. After an investigation was done into their deaths, it was determined it was an accident, and the going theory was they went through the entrance into the ballroom, they went all the way down, and then they went into one of the two tunnels that spiders off to the side, and they managed to go all the way down to 230 feet. And at that depth, they must have developed a nasty case of nitrogen narcosis, which is like being drunk. And so in that state, they must have lost track of time and how much air they were using. And so by the time they got back to the ballroom to begin their ascent, they ran out of air. The son must have run out first and grabbed his father, shown him his air gauge to point out that he has no air left. His dad, in seeing that, must have taken his regulator out and put it in his son's mouth, and they began buddy breathing as they ascended to the exit. Except the father's tanks also ran out of air very shortly after that, and the father passed out and sank to the bottom. The son managed to get a full breath of air and began trying to swim as fast as he could to the surface. He even inflated his water wings to make himself go faster. Except in his panic, he must have let go of the guideline and swam all the way up and then hit the ceiling and then been not able to find the way out and ultimately drowned. Today, despite all the warnings outside and inside of the cave itself telling inexperienced divers to not go any farther, inexperienced divers continue to go into Eagle's Nest, and inexperienced divers continue to die inside of Eagle's Nest. To date, 11 people have died inside of that cave.
Man, I ain't gonna lie.
Where's this?
It's Florida. You said what?
Nothing.
No, I'm saying, like, what question you had?
Well, no, I was trying to see where it was at, and I'm like, with all the fatalities, I'm just trying to figure out, like...
But even though so many fatalities, you got to also realize, even though, again, with all the fatalities, how many people actually are able to successfully go down and come back. It ain't on them to be complete. Let's be honest. It ain't on them that you keep going down there and dying. I know what you're going to say, and a lot of people... What
you think I'm going to say?
Why don't y'all just close it and put it off limits? Because then you'll have people who would jump those gates, who were, you know what I'm saying? You can't... It's one of those things you probably can't really secure like that.
Well, I'm not saying the pun itself. I'm just saying that, like, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, is there a way to, like, just block off that interest for people being able to enter that hole?
Probably
not necessarily the pond itself.
Probably not, because it's natural stuff. So, like, trying to block that hole from people. Nah,
I mean, I get it. I'm just like, damn. I mean, I don't
it's
know.
tragic at the end of the day. It is something tragic that constantly keeps happening. And at the end of the day, if people are constantly putting at risk, like, that's with anything. People constantly put their life at risk doing a lot of things in life. And even though they're seeing people die from it, on their end, they were like, oh, well, that's them, that's not me. You know? And then when you die, another person said, oh, that's you, not me. They died. It's like let's say, for instance, we know a lot of people keep dying with Lake Lanier. They won't block that off and stop people, but it's always casualties. Yep. That's with any, like, lake, river, pond, whatever. People are gonna continue, and then even if you block it off and all the warning signs are there, y'all are still being disobedient. So we all know how humans are. Humans, you can put all the signs you want to. You can try to prevent them.
Well, I guess
they still gonna find a way. Even if you put like a gate over the hole to prevent people, somebody's gonna go and pull it off and say, hey, because you know how back in the day people was like, hey, you want to see something cool? Man, and then they go up to something that forbids you to go. Man, we found this spot. We took the guard. We know how to take it, or cut the hole in it to get in. You know.
Well, yeah, I guess in their sense or defense, I should say, they're doing, I guess, all that they can to prevent with all the signs and the warnings and stuff like that. And you have a decision to either continue or turn around. So, I mean, yeah, I get it.
R.I.P. to them.
Definitely R.I.P. to them and everyone else who's lost their life.
Also, we got to put some responsibility on victims, too. But even though that's kind of seems like uncaring or heartless to say, but when you have all those warnings, I would not have to my son to anything like that. You know what I'm saying? I don't care how experienced I am. My son, for one, was already cautious. Two, he has no experience for it.
True. And even if you're going to do it, and I guess that you're not, expert at doing it, do all the research and make sure you prepare yourself and make sure you have the correct tanks and all of that to be able to even go beyond whatever 200. Well,
I wouldn't even win.
No, I wouldn't have went either. But for the people that decide to go,
if you ain't experienced, do not go where they say don't go.
Yeah.
Like if you
just point blank. Yeah. But people like
True.
to take risks. People are risks. They like to live on the edge.
Yeah, true.
Midday on June 10th, 1981, an Italian man and his 6-year-old son walked to the edge of their property in Frascati, which is an area in Italy known as the hub of Rome's local wine industry. The father needed to repair a section of their fence, and his son, who he said had the soul of Huckleberry Finn, wanted to tag along. But as soon as the work began, Alfredo just wanted to go play in the vineyards, and so he ran off. And the father didn't think much of it, because his son always played in the vineyards, and just figured he would see him back at the house. When the father finished up the work around 7 p.m. and walked back into his house, he was surprised that Alfredo wasn't there. And so he asked his wife, have you seen our son? And she said, no, can you go out and find him? Because dinner's going to be on the table any minute. So the father goes back outside, expecting to see Alfredo come running out from behind some hiding place, but he doesn't. And he yells out for his son and doesn't get a response. And so he begins walking his property and yelling for Alfredo, and he's not finding him. And so after 2 hours of looking, he finally just calls the police. The police arrive, and initially it's just a couple of officers with flashlights, and they spend about 2 hours looking as well. They can't find him, so they call in backup in the form of officers with sniffer dogs, and the dogs began searching the property for another 3 hours, and they still couldn't find him. A little after midnight, the fire department, known in Italy as the fire brigade, they joined in as well. Shortly thereafter, a fire brigade officer was on the edge of Alfredo's property when he discovered a small hole in the ground. It would turn out Alfredo's neighbor had dug an illegal well, which was a common practice at the time, and generally, if you dug one of these wells and you struck water, you would report the well. But if you dug down and you didn't find water, you would just cover it up with a girder and you wouldn't tell anyone. In this case, however, the hole the officer was looking at did not have anything covering it. And so he knelt down and he yelled Alfredo's name into this hole, and at first he didn't hear anything. Then he yelled again, and he heard Alfredo yell back for his mother. Alfredo must not have seen the opening as he was running around playing, and he fell feet first into an 80-meter deep shaft. After Alfredo was found, the fire brigade took over rescue efforts, and so additional fire brigade units were called to help. But as soon as those additional units showed up, the captains of the different units began arguing with each other because it wasn't really clear how they were going to get him out. And unfortunately, the fire brigade immediately made a very bad decision. They decided to lower a plank into the shaft attached by a rope that he could grab onto, and they could pull him out that way. But when they lowered it at about 24 meters, the plank got stuck inside of the tunnel. And when they yanked on the rope to try to free it, the rope came off of the plank, but the plank remained wedged in the tunnel, blocking the tunnel. By the following morning, TV crews had swarmed the area, and one of them offered up a two-way microphone that could be lowered down into the hole so they could talk directly to Alfredo. When the microphone was finally lowered down next to his face, he was crying and pleading for them to get him out and that he missed his mother. Amateur spelunker Tullio Barnaby, a 23-year-old, had come over and joined the vigil that night. The plank plan shocked him for its foolishness, and so too did the scene. It was like everyone and no one was in charge. The well opening had been widened in hopes that a very skinny person would be willing to be lowered down to remove the piece of wood that was obstructing the tunnel. And since Tullio was a spelunker and was comfortable in confined spaces and was pretty skinny, he volunteered himself to do it. As he was lowered down, he quickly realized the inside of this tunnel was not a straight shot. It was more like a corkscrew. And so because of its windy nature, he was not able to get down to the wood. And so he signaled to go back up again. And when he reached the surface, he didn't have the wood in hand, but he told the fire brigade that because of the windy nature, it's unlikely Alfredo fell all the way to the bottom. He's probably stuck somewhere in the middle, which is a good thing. But we have to be really careful as we pull him out that we don't do anything that unintentionally causes him to slip farther into the hole. Tullio's suggestion was they go out and recruit professional spelunkers to be involved in the rescue because they would understand how to get someone out of such a tight space so far down in the ground. But the fire brigade disregarded his advice and said, we don't have enough time for that. At 6 a.m.
But y'all don't have no
It's always
freaking
those.
solutions. The first solution that failed. Like what?
I heard of a similar story like this. And I remember watching when I was a kid. I watched my mom loved Lifetime, right?
Yeah, mine
She
too.
loved Lifetime movies. And I ain't gonna lie, Lifetime movies back in the day, very good. After a while, they started falling out. But to bypass that, it was a joint where this baby fell in a well, and she got stuck, and they had to. I think she was down there for some days. A baby. Mm-hmm. So imagine a baby getting stuck inside of a well. But they was able to rescue the baby though. Yeah. And it just put me in that mind space. And I remember watching. My mom was like, "Yo, I remember that happen." She was like, "I remember they were happening, and they were filming it and everything." So I'm gonna try to look it up at the end.
And the next day, about 12 hours after Alfredo's fallen into the swell, the fire brigade would make another very poor decision. They decided they would drill down another hole parallel to the one Alfredo was in, and they would drill down past the point they believed Alfredo was, at which point they would turn and drill laterally and connect to the tunnel Alfredo's in, grabbing Alfredo, pulling him across, and back up the new tunnel. Tullio objected, and he said the vibrations from this drill are almost certainly going to dislodge the boy and cause him to slip farther into the tunnel. But once again, the fire brigade did not listen to him. The drilling began about 2 hours later, and by that afternoon, Alfredo's plight had become major national news, with every single TV station playing a 24/7 live broadcast of the well, watching the drilling take place. Even the Italian president made a special trip to the well to see how it was going. But the drilling was very slow, and Alfredo, he had that microphone next to his head, and he was crying half the time, and the other times he was just pleading with them to get him out and saying he was cold or that he was tired, and the rescuers would say, "We're going to be down there to get you, don't fall asleep, we're going to get you out of there." Finally, after 36 hours, they had drilled all the way down to their intended stopping point, and they began drilling across into Alfredo's well. When they finally broke into Alfredo's well, rescuers rushed in with flashlights and looked up and looked down, and there was no sign of Alfredo. And they called it up to the top, and they said, "He's not here." And then all of a sudden, they heard a faint voice coming from all the way down at the bottom of the well. The vibrations from all of the drilling had indeed caused Alfredo to slip all the way to the very bottom. They estimated he was approximately 30 meters below this new parallel tunnel, and at that depth, the temperatures would be freezing. And so now Alfredo, on top of everything else, was facing hypothermia. They quickly lowered the microphone again down to Alfredo, and they told him, "We're going to get you out of there. We're sorry we dropped you, but we're going to get you." And Alfredo's voice came back weak. He was tired, he was sore, he was freezing, he was crying. It was like the situation was just getting so much worse by the second, and rescuers knew they had to get to him probably in the next couple of hours, or that was it. And so another skinny man volunteered to go down into the hole, and they lowered him, and he would go all the way down to the bottom where Alfredo was. And he would call up that he found him and that Alfredo was alive. But Alfredo was stuck waist deep in this mud that the guy could not pull him out of. And so every time he'd begin to raise him slightly out of the mud, he'd lose his grip and he would fall back into the mud, going deeper into the mud each time. And after the 7th time of not being able to do it, Alfredo was getting dangerously close to being neck deep in the mud. And so the guy had to be pulled back out again. As soon as he was pulled back out again, more men volunteered themselves to go in there and try to yank him out, but many of them were not able to even get down to Alfredo. They would get stuck along the way. A couple did get to Alfredo, but they said his condition was worsening, he was weak, he wasn't even assisting, trying to get pulled out. It was clear they were reaching the end. Finally, at 6:36 a.m. on Saturday, so 2.5 days after Alfredo fell in, they could not get him to respond on that two-way microphone. And so they sent down a sonar probe, and they could not detect a heartbeat, and doctors declared him dead. The next day, liquid nitrogen was poured into the hole to preserve the body, and then 31 days later, they were finally able to extract it. After it was all over, the 25 million plus people that watched this take place live on television were crushed with what happened to Alfredo. There was a general sense that lots of people let this poor child down, which led to his death. But the person who was ultimately held accountable for it was the neighbor, who had illegally dug the well. And so the neighbor was charged with manslaughter and was sent to jail, but their sentence is not publicly available online. So that's going to do it, guys. If you found the secret in today's episode, let us know in the comments what it is.
Whew, that was a touching one right there, man.
It
I was
so
praying like the whole time. Like,
I had so much hope. I was like, okay, they gonna get that baby up out of there. They gonna get him out of there.
And like they said, man, like a lot of things they did was just incorrect, you know. Like, and then I guess out of pride and out of just
I'm in charge. I got the power. I make the decisions.
Y'all don't want to listen to.
You don't know what
this
you're
guy
been doing this for 30 plus years.
But he's experiencing what y'all, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he's telling y'all, like, hey, that might not be a good idea.
And you got to understand, he went down and he was able to, you know, observe, like, the condition, how it was, to relay that information back. Y'all not even down there. Like, y'all making blind decisions. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just, that breaks my heart. Like, that's sad.
So this is the one, I think it's it. It's called Everybody's Baby, the rescue of Jessica McClare. And the baby with, I don't know about that one. But I remember,
I'm pretty sure I've seen it. I probably don't watched every Lifetime movie there was. It's all my mama used to watch.
But yeah, I remember watching that one. I was just like, wow. And they was able to rescue the baby though.
Yeah.
And you got to think about it. If they're able to rescue a baby that fell in the well, y'all could have rescued her. But again, I mean, not her. Alfredo, my bad. I'm saying if they was
able to rescue the baby,
because the baby is a girl. My bad.
Alfredo, yeah.
But if y'all were able to rescue the baby, y'all should have been able to rescue Alfredo. But again, like the plank idea, when they said something about the plank, I said, nah, that ain't smart, bro. That plank gonna get stuck. You know what I'm saying? It's a wood. You know what I'm saying? If it tilts, and then how wide is the wood? You get what I'm saying? Then wood on a rope. I'm thinking that the wood might break. I mean, the rope might slip off. You know what I'm saying? Why we just kind of throw dangle a long enough rope where he could have grabbed, you know, and held tight. But that would have also been a possibility of him getting nudged and slipping even further.
Or the fact, the way that y'all was putting everything in this one, he wasn't technically straight down in this one. He was off in another little, you know, passage or whatever. So either way it go, I don't know.
Is the neighbor responsible to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you still can hold the neighbor responsible, but you also have to hold those people who made those decisions responsible as well. Because if with those decisions, which I understand it's a lack of knowledge and information because y'all never experienced anything like that before. When people are experiencing those situations or experience with things of that nature, y'all allow him to go down before, and he's able to give y'all some information. Why not take in the information? Why? Because he's not a professional. He's at the time just 23. Oh, you're young. You don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's done something like this before or experienced with holes like that before, and he understands to a degree, kind of, you know what I'm saying? Especially when you just don't know, you kind of, because even the so let's be real, even the vibration of widening the hole could have caused the him to slip further as well, because obviously y'all had to create enough space for somebody to go down, and that in itself caused vibration, and because every time you vibrate in the ground, whatever underneath slides.
Which technically, in hindsight, it did. Like with y'all drilling this other
No,
hole.
I'm talking about the beginning hole when they were trying to widen the hole from the start. They drilled in it. Basically, they widened it up from the beginning. But I haven't even got to that second drill part.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking about them just trying to widen it up for Tolio was able to go down. That I'm like, it just possibly could have been other options because it was happening in 1981.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't have a crane option or something. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it could have been definitely other options. It was just super, super bad decision making.
Panic.
And when you got two different, because whoever the two that was arguing, like you got this person headstrong, I want to make the decision. You got this person, y'all can't come to an agreement and an actual, good agreement on something, logical agreement to get this boy up out of there. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. It's just sad. And then having someone go down there, relaying the information, letting you know how it looks, how it seems down there, and y'all just ignoring anything that he says. And just like you said, don't know what you're talking about. This is what we do. We make the decisions. So.
Because you thinking about everybody's in a panic and it's a frenzy.
Yeah.
Nobody knows who's in charge. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's just all a bunch of things that just... all like everything, every aspect. Then you got all these people who's coming. The president just want to come and make sure he's there. Hey, I'm here. So when y'all vote for me, don't forget I showed up. Like, nobody truly cares. It was like a spectacle for real. You get what I mean?
I get what you're saying, but
because
I can't.
We rolling cameras 24/7, nonstop. I just hate when
when they're covering like that was. I guess a big story. That was a big story.
You gotta keep the cameras on 24/7.
No, I get what you're saying, but stuff like that happens. But I ain't gonna say no one truly cared per se. It's just like I said, it was just a lot of bad decision making because
and that's what I mean by nobody cared enough to relinquish control because so many people because it's power driven. And I'm in control. No, I'm in control. If we truly care, we'll be able to say, hey, let's run ideas past each other. If your idea is better than mine, let's roll with it. You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying, but I don't know. That's just sad.
Yeah,
that's
man.
Situation.
RP to him, man.
Yeah.
He did not deserve that. Like, he fought. He fought, though. He fought as well. He just he was weak. And at 10 years old... right? Ballen didn't even say his age.
Yeah.
Well, you can't blame him though. You can't blame him. He fought as much as he could.
Most definitely can't blame.
Yeah.
You can't blame him, but
first
and foremost, the hole shouldn't have been made, and if it was made, it should have been covered properly.
Yeah.
What was you about to say?
No, I was just trying. I was just reflecting on all of them.
Oh, I was just, okay. The hole should have been covered properly.
Yeah.
The situation should have never happened. That's all I want to say. But you can go.
Yeah. No, I was just saying RP to him. RP to John. I'm sure Helen's mourned very, very hard from that situation with the first story.
Most definitely.
Because she was there with him.
RP to all 8 of them.
I'm just reflecting back to these stories.
Okay, go.
Oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah, RP to all of them. I'll just reference back to the names.
I get,
because
yeah, I
that's
get
who
you,
we
but I was
was
just like, rest in peace to all 8 of them.
Yeah, you're
like,
right. Yeah. Because honestly, those who are the tourists just followed the lead of the guys. The guys said it was safe. They're like, hey, y'all should know. And unfortunately, they got it, y'all do. Like, be responsible. If you're going to do these type of tours and guides, please understand you might be putting people's lives in danger. Money is life is more important than money,
It most definitely. In that situation, I understand things happen because if y'all feel like, hey, there was, it hasn't been raining, there was no rain in the forecast. Rain sometimes come out of nowhere. I'd be like, dang, know it's gonna rain today. It didn't say it was gonna rain, so that's just sad too.
Yeah. And then Darren and Dylan, RIP to them.
Yeah, most definitely.
You know what I'm saying? I really hated Dylan. Was nervous, scared, and afraid.
What was his grandmother?
Yeah, his grandmother said he really didn't.
But with the excitement. Sometimes you do things like, I'm really not into that, but damn, my parents really
bro, I hating this.
So I gotta break it to them at one point that, Dad, I really ain't feeling this shit.
Because like I said, when Ballen started first talking about that situation, it reminded me of the guy. I really don't know how, I know he was early in his adulthood.
Yeah.
I can't remember if he was 18, 19, 20, 21, but he was early in adulthood. He didn't want to go. But he was like, Dad really wanted to go. He bought us these tickets.
And he's just like, okay, this can be, you kind of see the good, okay, this could be a little bonding time. He's really excited. Yeah, but it's super unfortunate.
Don't be putting people's lives at risk over your selfish judgment. You know what I'm saying? Hey, selfish would be wrong term. But, I mean, not judgment, but I'm saying enjoyment. Because, I really want to do this. But you also got to think about all the risks. Like, factor in every risk that possibly could be made. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you.
But and also with Alfredo, like you said earlier, it is deeply is responsibility of the neighbor. But I feel like other people should be held responsible.
I feel like as far as the hole being drilled and not properly being covered, that's definitely on the neighbor. And then with the people doing their job, it was just bad decision making, poor decision making.
And I'm just saying, I'll fire
doing their job.
Well,
we don't know if they did. We don't know what came about from that.
Yeah, because he said we really ain't even.
Yeah,
the
and then
information
with
is
that
not
even
there.
being on my conscience, the guilt, and then later on, because like when you're in situations, you think you're making a good decision, but then you think like, damn, I should have did it that way. We could have did it this way. Didn't think of that.
Damn, totally was right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just sad, man.
Yeah, sad stories, man.
Yeah.
Y'all spam us up. Y'all let us know y'all thoughts about it in the comment section down below, man. But as always, y'all know how I go. I do go by the name DJ Kid. This is.
Here, Nicole.
We are.
Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my folks. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar.